Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have our friend here, Tony Marolt, joining us once again. It's been a little bit of a hiatus, but we are happy to have him back. Lead Left, Grow Right is the name of the company. Chief Leader and President. He's also an author. He's from Kansas City, Missouri, and we'll have him do the honors of saying hello before we begin. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well. Pleasure to have you back. How's everything been?
It's been going really well, actually.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. For new listeners today, let's just remind them a little about who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into today's topic of conversation for sure.
Sure. I'm Tony Marolt, and my leadership journey started probably in Boy Scouts at age 11. Best leadership lab in the world. Then I went to the United States Naval Academy, another amazing leadership laboratory. Then I served 9 years in the Navy in various positions. I exited the Navy and went into the corporate world, and I worked for Hallmark Cards for over 25 years. And then I started my company when we parted ways.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're excited to have you. Should we recap from where we left off last time? It was leadership is not about being the best. It's about making everyone better.
Right. Yeah. It's a great quote that was sent to me by a good friend. That quote, a lot of people feel they have to be the best. So if they're leading a group of finance people, they have to know the most about finance, or if they're in distribution, they have to know everything there possibly is about the supply chain. That's good. Those are growth opportunities for people to know, but really it's making everyone else better around you. Because if you, in your little corner of the world, I use that phrase quite a bit, in your little corner of the world, if you can make people better leaders and are engaged and excited, I just keep reading, and it's sad, all these articles about how people are not engaged anymore. Ridiculous percents of people that are not engaged. So that's because, in my view, the leaders have not adapted. In some cases, adapted to remote work is a big deal. Companies are fighting with people, employees, and right back. And so that's why in your corner of the world, you got to make other people better at what they do. We also talked a little bit about, do you really have to be technically savvy? Again, it's sort of kind of like that about being the best. Do you have to be the smartest person in the room all the time? No, you don't. Not to be a great leader anyway. There are certain positions where, yes, you may have had a track. Let's say IT is a good one. Finance is another one. Marketing might be another one. And that's great if you've got that background, but you could still come into marketing, and if you've got a great team, you could still lead them very, very well, even if, let's say, you were in the supply chain area of the company. But a lot of companies don't want to do those switches, or if they do, it's only to a few golden boys or girls that they say these people are going to be executives, so let's give them a broad education of the company. So the bottom line is, you don't, in my view, you don't have to be technically savvy, at least not be the smartest person in the room if you've got a team that is the smartest person in the room. So, and then we talked a little bit about fierce conversations, and I think we're going to spend a little bit of time here for a couple of weeks. And we talked about, what does fierce mean? It's really about being real, being authentic. Those are all things that fierce. And people hear the word fierce and they kind of could get off put by that, because fierce, sounds like you're very aggressive and stuff. It's not that. It's about being real every time, being yourself the same way you bring yourself outside of work to interact with people the same way you're within the company, being authentic, having conversations that may be difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still being authentic and teaching others to be authentic. Again, in your little corner of the world, you have tremendous influence. Um, and then I'll have several quotes as we go through with Susan Scott. Um, our lives succeed or fail one conversation at a time. And I learned so much from this book, as I've said in previous um, Zoomcasts. But
Yeah.
um, this, um, I really believe that every time you have an opportunity to interact with people for a real conversation, not just passing your coworker in the hall and saying hi, that's not a conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, People often forget in communication in 101. We see it all the time. Facebook's a great example, um, where communication is always two-way.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a sender and there has to be a receiver, and there has to be an interaction where if I send something to you, Joe, then you send something back to me,
Mm-hmm.
and now we are having a conversation. But on Facebook, a lot of times people just go out there and
And
blast somebody
rant
or
and then
something.
go. Yep.
Yep. So, um, and then we talked a little bit about, again, this whole thing about having authenticity is when you come to work, are you leaving your problems at the door? Some companies, they expect you leave all your problems at the door, that you're on company work time now. The reality is that never works.
Mm-hmm.
People can they can say that. People can say, "Well, I'm trying to leave my problems at the door," but the reality is you're still thinking about those problems. So,
Yeah.
so leaders and managers have to be able to work with those folks and understand that they may be going through some difficult things outside of work, and then adapt to, okay, well, maybe they have to more flexible schedule, whatever that looks like. But let's just stop this notion of when you come to work, your problems, you have to leave them outside work. It just doesn't really work.
Mm-mm, it doesn't. You're right about that.
Okay, so maybe we could continue the conversation. We're going to delve into some more fierce conversations, and I guess the first thing I'll start with, which isn't, it's some of it's foundational in fierce conversations, but some of it's just purely foundational as a manager, as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So with Gallup over year after year after year telling us that by a wide margin, over 50%, the reason people quit is their manager. They don't quit the company very often. They mostly quit the manager. And that means that that's a huge burden on the leader to make sure that doesn't happen because of all the training that we've invested in people. But it also is, if you're having a good foundation, that also means that you're not afraid to address people that maybe, we call them problem children sometimes in corporate America. Sometimes they're just not a fit for the job, and some of that's on the front end with hiring. But if they're not a fit for the job, one thing you might try as a leader is to find something else for them to do within the company. In some cases, no. If it's egregious behavior, you got to just terminate them, and that's sad, but that's how it is. So, as a one of the things that just kind of bugs me a lot, and this goes to your foundation as a leader, is people will say, "Well, I welcome feedback. My door is always open." And so the employee walks in and talks to the manager, Sometimes it's a problem that they're having in the work environment. Sometimes it could be a complaint about an individual, whatever. Sometimes it's about, hey, I have this great idea. And the manager listens and doesn't, thanks the employee, et cetera, et cetera. And the employee walks out of the room and nothing ever happens. So when you do that, you can say your door is always open, but you're not really meaning that if in fact you are then rejecting the employee's conversation with you. And when you reject the conversation with you, the word gets out very quickly. Yeah, this boss, same as the old boss or same as the boss 3 times before that. They say they're open, but really they're not. So I'm just going to quit on suggesting new ideas or bringing problems because I know it's not going to get solved. So that's if you're going to say the door's open, then make sure you're ready to have a fierce conversation, an authentic conversation between you and the employee, and then wrap it up and take some action that you've decided within that situation. Have you had any managers, Jill, say my door's open, but they're really not open to
Yeah,
feedback?
a lot of them. Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of them. Yeah,
yeah,
they say it, but they don't mean it. And we talked about people in management positions with their leadership skills and how, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Be open, be honest. I mean, but yeah, you don't feel comfortable opening that door. You don't believe it's an open door
right,
policy. They say it to kind of lure you in, I think. And then you feel like,
right,
what did I do? Why did I open my mouth? Like, why did now I feel like my
exactly.
secret's out. But yeah.
Hmm.
Wow.
Have you
Yeah.
ever been in a performance review um, where, well, have you been in any performance review? I guess I would ask, where the manager said, well, do you have feedback for me? And really took that feedback in.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might be shortcomings that they had or whatever it might be. Have you ever run into that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, but yeah, I have some bad experiences, unfortunately, with management leadership. Always, not until the
Hmm.
past few years have things settled, but I've always had a bad taste in my mouth. I haven't met a real good leader up until a few years ago in my life. But other than
Yeah,
that, it's a shame that every
yeah.
work experience had to be that way. Except when I was 12. When I was 12 to 18, working for a DJ company, my boss was great. Yeah.
And that was just a couple of years ago, right?
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. Of course. Yes.
uh, yeah, and unfortunately that, again, getting to this foundation, so many leaders don't have their foundation is quicksand or something that's porous. They just can't stand up.
Hmm.
They can't they can't take feedback.
Yeah.
They're certainly willing to give you feedback. Often
Yeah.
it's negative. It would be nice if they
It's
gave you
like,
positive feedback.
hmm.
I ran into a young man who is like the super cart guy at Walmart. He's out there, he busts his butt all the time. And I said, um, what's the number of the store? I really want to write a compliment about you and write to the store manager. He said, and he gave me the info. And he said, yeah, they really don't say anything
Wow.
positive to us. And that's just horrible. Absolutely horrible that they would say that. But so we talked about, if the manager is really not authentic, that people eventually they may try a couple of times. It just depends on the individual. And then they kind of give up on really having a good conversation with the boss. And one of the things to me that's a huge shame is when that happens to people, all of that human capital is bottled up now, and you're not able to leverage that human capital, all the ideas the employee has for process improvement or perhaps a new product. I know I did that. I had an idea for a product, um, and I took it forward, and it went one level, but it didn't go much after that. But I still felt good that at least on one level, they were willing to listen to the guy. I happened to be in
Mm-hmm.
procurement at the time, from procurement, who was suggesting a new product line. So, um, so it is possible, but
Mm-hmm.
often that is not the case. So, um, if you know, a lot of this is around safety, and if if the leader says, "Hey, my office is open," or in staff meetings is really saying, "Hey, great job, team," whatever, but they're not really looking at the individual needs. It's still not safe.
Yeah.
People feel like, "Hey, the boss is gonna ding on me if this happens," and so they become fearful. They become, in some cases, paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into this at Hallmark Cards in the IT department, especially, where the folks on my team, who were about half business and about half IT people, the IT people in particular, were so afraid at the very beginning when I took over the group. And this is a new group that was established. And,
Yeah.
and they had been, over the years, it was very easy to see that the leaders in that whole division,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're IT people, and that's great. And when they get promoted, they're still IT people. And what happens is there was a lot of I'm the smartest at the leadership level, and so the employees, you could tell that uh, they'd been cowed, I guess would be a good way of saying it. They'd been led to a place where they did not want to bring things forward, where they brought everything to the manager, because they didn't want to get in trouble, and they know they'd gotten in trouble before. So it was very difficult. It took me over
Mm-hmm.
a year to kind of unstick those folks, um, and say, you don't need to come to me for every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
Go out there and do your work. And if you need to take action and it's not going to, bring the company down or bring an IT system down,
Mm-hmm.
then by all means, you take control of
That's
that. You're smarter than me. Go ahead and take control and be a leader. And eventually they did. They stopped coming to my office, and it was very heartening for me to see some of these folks, especially IT folks,
no.
who had gotten some freedom, and so they were able to forge ahead.
Oh. Well,
So
by the way, Tony, let's remind everyone how we could reach you. We got to reestablish that as
that's
always.
yep. Uh, Tony.Marolt@gmail.com is my private email. I welcome feedback, truly. And if you don't get something back from me, then that means I'm a liar and you shouldn't listen to me anymore. Um, so that's one way. Also, on my website, Lead Left Grow Right, all one
Okay.
word, leadleftgrowright.com. You can put your information in a contact form, and your questions or whatever you want to communicate, that will go right to me in the email. And you can always call me as well, 816-694-4656.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. All right, continuing our discussion here, we still have 8 minutes left in the show. Where shall we continue? I know we go off cuff, off book. That's fine. But
Yeah.
what
Well,
else is
leadership
important
is
that you wanted
it's
to?
such an interconnected thing that
Mm-hmm.
even when I put an agenda item, it's often related to experiences that we have. So that's always fine with me if it's good for you to go off topic periodically.
Always. That's what we do best, Tony.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
From
You
one
just
leader
have to
to another. I'm
circle and
following, I'm leading, I'm
yeah,
doing
okay.
my best. But
I got to
yeah.
rein Tony back in, get him back in the corral here. Um, I don't stray too far, but I understand what you're saying exactly.
Hmm.
So again, this foundation is integrity. It's doing what you say you're going to do. It's having true communication where there is two-way communication, not a one-way communication,
Hmm.
which is not communication. So all of those things help you build this foundation, and you're not on quicksand. And that way, you can address your employees and create a safe environment for them because they'll know that you're operating with integrity. You are doing what you said, and you also do that. So as you build up that capital, then the employees respond accordingly, and they become not fearful and more open and honest and authentic themselves. So I
And
guess
that
we could just
moral courage. You
moral
also,
courage,
you know,
exactly.
hmm
Moral courage.
expect
And
people
that's
to
so
have it.
lacking. As an example, we had a big IT meeting. Maybe I've told this story before, but it's still a good story. And we were talking about some difficult things that impacted people, etc. And I asked them a couple of questions that everyone wanted to ask, but no one would ask.
Okay.
And after the meeting, another Tony came up to me and said, "Tony, thanks for doing that." He said, "Because we really needed to know and what was going on and how that was going to impact people." And another person did the same thing. So, but that takes moral conviction, because when they said that to me, they also said, "Yeah, we we just don't want to do that. We're afraid of getting
Hmm.
burned or whatever it is." So in some ways that's good because at least you have someone with more courage. But then that person, sometimes if they're seen asking really authentic questions at the meetings like that, then they can be seen and labeled as a troublemaker, which is sad.
Yeah.
That tells you that you don't have an authentic leadership team where people can really talk openly and honestly.
That's why we want to keep it open and honest, keep communication flowing as
That's right.
always. Do you want to
That's
preview
right.
a little bit what we're going to touch upon for next week as well?
Yeah. So now that we kind of established you have to have a foundation, and that foundation rests in you having the moral courage, having integrity, and all the elements we talked about. Um, we're going to talk more about conversations from fierce conversations.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about how conversations either enhance relationships, flatlines them, or takes them down. And we'll talk about that. And then being real is not the risk.
Hmm.
The risk is that I'll be known, I will be seen, I will be changed. Um, so being real, that sort of the example I just told you when I stood up and asked those questions that everyone else had.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you have to be real to do that. So we'll talk about that and continue our discussion of fierce conversations.
Perfect. And if we want to reach out to you, would you mind sharing all forms of contact?
Sure. Tony.Marolt@gmail.com, leadleftgrowright.com. Enter the contact information, and you can call me at 816-694-4656. And I also hope you'll go out there and buy my book, The Leadership Quotient, because a lot of the things that we've talked about, we've covered some of those, but not everything. And I think if you're interested in these kinds of conversations, reading that book will help you kind of
Yeah.
tune in a little bit more, even a little better. So,
Good. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you back here with us today. Pick up a copy of his book, Lead Left, Grow Right. Go to the website. And again, what does it say behind you? The best way to gain what?
The best way to
Power
gain power is
is
to give it up.
beautiful. Thank you again for that reminder and love the superheroes. How many do you have behind you? Are those all comic
Oh,
books or are those?
yeah. My oldest daughter painted those for my son,
Wow.
um, and so yeah. And then I put up a comic book border once this became my office. So yeah, those are amazing things that they drew, and I have an affinity for superheroes, and we've talked about before
Mhm.
how superheroes are either most of them are leaders on the good side and on the
Yep.
bad side. They can be great leaders too, just
Right.
with an opposing view.
Thank you so much. Have a
All right.
fantastic day, Tony. And to
You
everyone else,
too.
stay tuned. We'll be back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.